Hello and welcome back, Aetheral Space fans, to Aetheral Space Con! I'm lying, it's Aetheral Space 3.48.
You mean Aetheral Space Fan? A one? Time?
Not true. Hamilton made a Aetheral Space meme, so that, whether Hamilton likes it or not, they are now an Aetheral Space fan. That stain doesn't come off.
You make it sound gross. So this is a 9-pager, huh?
Yeah, you highlighted like crazy.
You remember what happened last time?
I don't know, do you?
No.
So, Big Monster Shell was on the roof of the Dawn House, and Skipper and the gang were getting ready to fight. Well, they were fighting it. They weren't getting ready. The fight had begun. Meanwhile, Dragan and Muzazi had an awkward elevator ride, where Muzazi, guilt-tripped him for a little bit, and Dragan was like, I don't want to hear whatever, dude. But he was actually sad. And they arrived at the engine room where they met up with Noel and worked up a plan to blow up the engine so the planet doesn't blow up. And as Muzazi was as they're about to begin the plan, who would arrive but the fifth dead? And Muzazi began to fight with him, and then blood struck the ground.
Oh, shit, so this is like the beginning of a King Arthur story. Blood struck the ground, and then they fought for 2 hours until the field
I can see you're highlighting everything. You're on my account.
Yeah, sorry, let me... It just does that automatically because I have your account in.
He keeps hacking my usernames.
I'm hacking the mainframe.
I'm injecting your DNA with the DDoS virus.
I'm in.
He's in. But anyway, yeah, that's what happened last time.
My Dragon impression, because he's a cogitant, which means he can hack the smile.
Exactly.
Alright. Blood struck the ground. Muzazi roared in pain as he pulled his arm back, staring wide-eyed at the creature that had bitten down on it. The thing had leapt out of the shadows and taken Muzazi's arm in its jaw in an instant. With the swordsman's attention focused on the fifth dead himself, he'd neglected to watch his surroundings. The creature was like some kind of twisted dog, but smaller, with fur curling upwards from its back like some kind of mohawk. A lot of some kinds.
No?
Its entire body was composed of the same orange glass-like substance as the swordfish the fifth dead had launched. The fifth dead himself hadn't moved from his original position, staring at Muzazi impassively. Excuse me. Disposal hyena, he said, calm as could be. Continue attack. He could say that all he liked, but Muzazi wouldn't permit this animal to continue harming him. He let his aether flow through his arm and into the beast, creating thrusters inside its mouth that forced its jaw open, freeing Muzazi from its grip. Ooh, that's like putting aether on aether. The disposal hyena yelped as it fell to the ground, and a second later the kiss of luminescence took its head from its shoulders. I love that. The beast shattered into orange aether that returned to the fifth dead. The giant took a step forward. Muzazi breathed heavily as he kept his sword pointed towards the fifth dead, trying to ignore the warm blood trickling down his right arm. Luckily, the beast hadn't gotten his dominant hand, so he could still use luminescence. So is luminescence like a one-handed sword?
It can be used either.
Well, never mind. But the damage would still reduce the strength of his two-handed swings considerably. He let his wounded arm fall down to his side and shifted into the Entrande?
Yeah.
How do you say that?
Entrande
stance. A one-handed sword style that would suit the current conditions better. Will you not fight for yourself, fifth dead? Muzazi said quietly, staring the giant down. Or are you simply too craven? The fifth dead felt insulted by the taunt. He didn't show it. Instead, he calmly adjusted the grip on his quarterstaff and swung it at Muzazi's head, once, twice, thrice. Each attack quick as lightning, accompanied by a sound like a deafening explosion. Muzazi blocked the attacks with slashes of luminescence, positioning his parries so that the quarterstaff slid off the angle of his blade rather than stopping straight away. He couldn't risk the force behind those attacks damaging luminescence. There was a real possibility the fifth dead could smash the sword given his clearly monstrous strength. What was Hadrian doing? Inwardly, Muzazi cursed the fact that he couldn't look behind himself. Defending the others while fighting the fifth dead was a difficult proposition. If he could fight without having to worry about anything else, he was certain this battle would go very differently. He'd have better mobility, for one, rather than being trapped in defense. The quarterstaff went for Muzazi's legs, and the swordsman hopped over it, feeling the air pressure created by the swing buffeted his feet like rabid waves. The moment Muzazi was in the air, the fifth dead opened his mouth to speak. Summon! He growled, orange aether crackling around him. Disposal! Muzazi interrupted the summon with an overhead swing of his sword, and the fifth dead shut his mouth as he lifted the quarterstaff to block the attack. The crackling of his aether subsided, and no disposal hyena came forth. Interesting. It seemed he needed to finish reciting that mantra in order to bring forth a recorded animal. Was it some kind of technique for focusing his mind in a particular direction, then? Whatever the case, Muzazi knew it was something he could take advantage of. So long as the fifth dead couldn't speak, he was limited to only using his physical strength. The path to victory, then, consisted of relentless attack. Oh, it's just like fighting Ishin, Sword Saint Ishin.
Force him into the corner.
Yeah, you just have to keep going. Hesitation is defeat. Muzazi ducked under another lightning-fast swing of the quarterstaff and thrust the palm of his wounded arm forward, landing a hit right into the fifth dead's stomach. The moment he made contact there, he created a thruster, maximum strength, and the white fire that was spat forth sent the fifth dead flying backwards away from the engine. Why would he do that? That gives him a chance to talk. What he should have done is cut his tongue off, or, put a thruster on his tongue so he can't say the words.
He's big, he can't reach his tongue.
Well, what about his jaw, then?
He's big man, tall man, giant man. He's
fucking manlet Muzazi.
Everyone's a manlet compared to the fifth dead.
There wasn't even a second for Muzazi to catch his breath. As the fifth dead was sent flying away, he seized the special officer by the scruff of his collar, dragging him along. Wind crashed against Muzazi's face as the two of them were sent zooming towards the entrance, but he didn't relent on the strength of the thruster. He refused to be undone by such petty fears as physical injury. The moment they reached the door, Muzazi canceled the thruster on the fifth dead's stomach and created two new ones on the soles of his own feet instead. The sudden burst of upwards motion broke the Revenant's grip on Muzazi's collar, and as the special officer finally rose up to eye level with his opponent, he slashed at the fifth dead's mouth with luminescence. If nothing else, if he could hit the fifth dead's tongue, he could prevent the giant from speaking, prevent him from summoning.
You see?
The fifth dead wasn't so easy an opponent. What?
Muzazi read your mind.
He did. The fifth dead wasn't so easy an opponent that he'd just allow that, though. He twisted his body sideways, blocking Muzazi's slash with his staff in one hand, and with the other he sent a devastating punch surging towards Muzazi's face. That was a skull crusher. Muzazi knew the moment he saw it. He created a new thruster on his own back, sending him speeding towards his opponent, moving inside the fifth dead's effective range so that the fist didn't strike him. As the punch sailed just past Muzazi's face, the special officer swung his own fist right at the fifth dead's jaw, pouring as much aether into his limb as he could. It never hit his mark. Or wouldn't it be its mark because it's his fist?
Oh, good point, yeah.
His fist is like a man. Hey, Muzazi,
we can do this.
Wrong, it's. When it's possessive, there's no apostrophe.
Okay, die. Summon. Kill Darnell Squirrel.
Summon Grammarly. Instead, the fifth did something simple. He lifted his leg with such speed, such power, and such ferocity that, the moment it came into contact with Muzazi's body, it sent him flying upwards at devastating speeds, right into the ceiling. There was a great slam as Muzazi hit the metal ceiling back first, and he knew in that moment... hit the metal roof back first, and he knew in that moment that the only reason his spine hadn't been broken was because of his defensive aether. Still, the breath was pushed out of his lungs by the force of impact, and luminescence slipped out of his grip, clattering to the ground below. The fifth dead looked up at him impassively, one foot resting on luminescence's blade. No! It's gonna summon Rage Muzazi if he breaks the blade. Oh, man. So what kind of sword does Muzazi have? Is it like a katana? Is it like a broadsword?
It's a weird sort of mix of, a Western style and, katana. So it's got, a Western style, hilt. But it's folded a million times above that.
Is it actually, or is that the meme?
That's the meme.
1 million aether folds. Actually, if you break open the sword, the spirit of the river comes out, and it can grant you a wish. Summon, he intoned, aether crackling around him. Restrained serpent. Like a bolt of electricity winding through the skies, an orange silhouette shot out from within the fifth dead's body and wrapped itself around Muzazi, binding him before it even finished materializing into the shape of a transparent orange snake. In some places, it phased through the ceiling behind Muzazi as it didn't even exist. In others, it was so present and so tight as to seem unbreakable, like steel cabling. The fifth dead pointed his staff upwards, towards Muzazi, and spoke again. Summon penetration swordfish. On his command, an orange point of aether appeared floating in front of him, pointing right at Muzazi's heart. The shot fired, moving with such speed and precision that Muzazi knew he wouldn't be able to block it. This was an attack made for smashing through armor, after all. It would pierce Muzazi's body and impale his heart with all the difficulty of a knife going through butter. But that was only if it hit. A clumsy blue blur leapt in front of Muzazi, between him and the swordfish, Aether sparking around the legs it had used to make such a jump. As it and the swordfish crossed paths, the orange Aether construct vanished in a... I knew he was gonna fucking Gemini one of these! Orange Aether construct vanished in a flash of electric blue light, and the Aether circulating around Muzazi's savior intensified just a tad. Dragon Hadrian landed in a heap on the floor, blue Aether still crackling around him. What had he done? Muzazi wasn't sure. Somehow the penetration swordfish had vanished, but it didn't seem that Hadrian had taken a hit for him. If this was some kind of Aether ability, it wasn't one he'd had the last time they'd fought. For all his faults, then, he seemed to be a fast learner. The fifth dead watched Hadrian fall expressionlessly, no sign of irritation or even surprise present in his mountainous features. 2, he said. So I have a question, because he recorded the animals, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But Dragon kind of, recorded it away, so he doesn't have access to swordfish now, right?
Until it returns to him when it's about to die. No, he does not have access to it.
Right.
Well, he has more than one swordfish, because he, used 10 against Ruth.
Oh, never mind that. Because I was going to say, what if he just, sucked up all the fucking animals? Now what'll you do?
He's like Kirby.
2, he said, simply noting... Actually, the smarter move for Dragon, instead of blocking the swordfish, would have been to leap underneath Muzazi, record the snake so Muzazi falls, and then use the snake to trap
the way he's got it set up right now is like a projectile, so you can record, smaller things.
2, he said, simply noting the change of circumstances before pointing his staff in Hadrian's direction instead. Summon! Disposal! Hadrian rolled over onto his back, glaring at the fifth dead. I love how he just talks faster. Gemini shotgun! Gemini shotgun! The blue Aether intensified with a sound like a crack of lightning, and the penetration swordfish appeared again, now zooming instead towards its master. Reflexes honed by countless battles drove the fifth dead to raise his quarterstaff in defense, but it wasn't enough. The swordfish struck the staff right in the middle, and there was a resounding crack as the weapon snapped in two. Oh, you fool, now you've given him nunchucks, each half flying in a different direction. Hadrian didn't have to have the strength to destroy such a weapon, but Muzazi now understood that he didn't need it. The swordfish had retained the Aether the fifth dead had poured into it, which Hadrian had then bolstered with his own. This technique, Gemini shotgun, took it in attack and returned it stronger. An additive counter. Impressive. This is like a JoJo moment, where he's like, he recorded this attack and sent it back tenfold! This guy, he poured his own Aether in to increase the power. Oh, did I lose you?
No, I'm here.
Muzazi hadn't been idle either, though. In the moments of distraction Hadrian's gambit had allowed him, he'd begun executing his own escape from the restrained serpent. A multitude of thrusters had appeared on his blade, one on the top of the blade, one on the base of the hilt, and a series on the sword's flat side to keep it floating up, edge pressed right against the serpent. Muzazi alternated the strength of the thrusters on each end of the sword, and as a result, luminescence moved back and forth, staring through the orange snake at an astounding speed. What would Muzazi do if Fifth Dead looked at him and said, "Summon Vor Serpent," and it just ate him? How would you feel about that?
That would be the end of Aetheral Space.
Muzazi was the main character the whole time?
Yeah.
He loathed using luminescence for such crude labor, but there was no other option. The fifth dead kicked off the ground, clearly resolved to take care of Hadrian himself, at the exact same moment Muzazi's efforts bore fruit. As the serpent shattered into orange glass, Muzazi fell down from the ceiling, and as he did, he grabbed his floating sword and slashed it at the giant, quickly growing bigger in his vision. The fifth dead's gaze snapped up to regard Muzazi as he drew close. There was no trace of surprise there, no caution or anxiety. This man was like a machine, executing the optimal move without delay. Instantly, the fifth dead planted his feet back down on the ground, turned his body to face the special officer, and lunged a hand forward to catch the blade as it descended. Hadrian was an annoyance, to be sure, but the fifth dead was wise enough to see that Muzazi was the greater threat. Muzazi did his best to keep the chills running through his body under control. At the speed he was falling, and with the current position of his body, there was no way for him to escape falling back into the fifth dead's grasp. Even if he created a thruster, his weight would slow his movement in those first few vital seconds. He could save luminescence, at least. The sword zipped out of sight with a burst of white aether, and in the next moment Muzazi found himself gasping for air as the fifth dead adjusted his attack to instead grab the special officer by the throat. The fifth dead held him aloft by the neck, Muzazi's legs kicking insufficiently at a floor flat? Far below them. Sorry, I thought that said fat for some reason.
It did.
Tightening his grip steadily, painfully. The fifth dead blinked, his face blank. His face blank. Weak. This was not a taunt. From the Fifth Dead's perspective, this was simply a statement of fact. Muzazi's attack had failed, so therefore he as a person was insufficient. He wasn't wrong. This was the way of the supremacy as well. But Hadrian had taught him something not so long ago, with that humiliating defeat. The feeling of a stun bolt thudding against his back, the outrage of being outdone by underhanded trickery. It wasn't something so easily forgotten. Defeat was the greatest teacher of all. Where strength was insufficient, it could be bolstered by wit. I knew it! The sword's gonna come through the back! There was a flash of white and blue light, and a second later the bloody blade of luminescence was protruding from the Fifth Dead's chest, stopping only inches away from Muzazi's flailing legs. The giant looked down at the sword that had run him through, mildly concerned. His grip on Muzazi's throat lessened, his hand shaking, until the special officer was able to slip out of his grasp and fall to the floor, fists ready for further combat. The Fifth Dead, for his part, simply fell limply to his knees. He hadn't sent luminescence flying away in a random direction at all. Instead, he'd sent it surging in Hadrian's direction. He knew that if he judged Hadrian's Gemini shotgun correctly, that meant that Oh, they worked together! That meant that the Cogitant should have been able to fire the sword back at the Fifth Dead with even greater strength. Oh my god! Finally, secret technique shot behind the back.
I can't believe team attack.
Yeah. What's their team attack name? It needs to be something cool. It needs to be like Twin Blades of the Samurai or something super tuny. Gemini Luminescence. Geminescence. Lumini. We'll work on it. Work on that. Actually, no, you work on it. You're the author. Figure that out. Muzazi extended a hand. In the end, his faith in his own abilities had been rewarded. Muzazi extended a hand, activated the thruster that was still present on Luminescence's hilt, and he's gonna tear him in half! And accompanied by the sound of tearing meat, the sword burst fully free from the Fifth Dead's torso and returned to its master's hand. Muzazi wiped from the blade what blood he could with the sleeve of his prison jumpsuit, the orange turning a grisly red where it made contact. The only sound was the Fifth Dead's ragged breathing and the splashing of his blood on the floor. Muzazi's gaze drifted past the prone giant, to where Hadrian was still laying behind him. He offered the Cogitant a curt nod. While he had no doubt that Hadrian's assistance was born solely out of self-interest, that didn't mean it hadn't saved him. Oh, he's You lost for one simple reason, Fifth Dead, Muzazi said, pointing luminescence towards his fallen enemy. You failed to consider. Summon! The Fifth Dead rasped, blood pouring from his jaw. Fool roster! And then the room erupted into orange light.
AU, where he says full rooster.
It's just a giant, basilisk. And then the room erupted into orange light. Muzazi found himself almost blinded, having to shield his eyes with one hand as the force buffeted against him like wind, sending himself skidding backwards on the floor. Hadrian yelped as the same force sent him flying out of sight, and he heard the scream of the Cogitant girl as well. The entire room shook. At this rate, there was a good chance the Fifth Dead would destroy the engine before they got the chance. The Fifth Dead was visible only as a kneeling silhouette within a geyser of burning orange aether. Muzazi winced. He knew an aether burn when he saw one. This was clearly a suicide gambit, but for the Fifth Dead... Oh, they're fighting both the aether techniques, the mental and the body, above and below. But for the Fifth Dead, that didn't mean as much, of course. Wait, what?
Don't worry.
Oh, he's already dead, isn't he? This guy... God, he's already... Doo-doo-doo. The orange light began to form bodies, shapes, countless additional silhouettes to accompany their master. Muzazi held his sword aloft. Let them come. Deegan Rush, the greatest swordsman the Supremacy had ever produced, had written often of a philosophy he referred to as the Golden Current. The Golden Current was the ideal way to... is this the Fibonacci sequence, but with your blade? Was the ideal way to move both yourself and your blade. A set of actions that would allow you to flow like water and succeed in any engagement. The key to truly transcendent swordplay was to train your body to identify the Golden Current and trust your instincts to lead you down that path naturally. The mind was something to be ignored. The Golden Current was too natural for it to be anything but a hindrance. Muzazi flowed through the Golden Path, allowing his sword to lead him as he cut through the hordes of aether constructs rushing at him. He did not think about what he was doing. He did not even consider it. His eyes were simply devices for taking in visual information, his ears receptacles for sound. Once he had this data, he trusted his body to act accordingly. Luminescence beheaded another 2 hyenas with a single sword stroke, exterminated a swarm of engorged wasps with individual and precise slashes, sliced another serpent down the middle, and stabbed between the eyes of a gargantuan elephant. White aether crackled around Muzazi's body protectively as he moved, almost danced through the horde of aether constructs. A ravenous hippopotamus found its stomach cut open. A chimpanzee— No, the chimpanzee war! Was impaled. Satan! It was him! Was impaled and shattered in the moment it first manifested. Always, Luminescence was ready, slapping swordfish out of the air as they zoomed towards Muzazi in complex swimming patterns. The sound of shattering glass was near constant, as was Muzazi's forward momentum. These precise slashes dispatched a lion intent on devouring the special officer, and once he'd smashed a chattering crustacean to a pulp against the floor, Muzazi was once more face to face with the fifth dead. The aether burn had already taken its toll. The giant's skin had sloughed away. Is that how you pronounce that word, or is it slowed?
So. I think either way, I don't really know how.
Sloughed away, revealing the bone and muscle beneath. Orange aether poured from him like a waterfall, the open wound in his chest glowing so incandescently it almost hurt to look at. Muzazi stabbed backwards, dispatching a shark swimming through the air towards him, and then slashed forward, his target clear. His blade met the fifth dead's neck and stuck there for a moment, the muscles there so thick and so firm that they were like steel, refusing to yield to Luminescence. Muzazi let a roar of effort leave his throat as he poured his aether into his sword, put as many thrusters on it as he could drive it forwards, onwards, further, until the slice was made complete, and the fifth dead's head came free. Victory. The moment the fifth dead's head left his shoulders, the orange aether died away to nothing. The body flopped over to the side and landed with a wet thud on the floor, its fall broken only by the skin that had already slipped from its bones. Muzazi let out a deep, relieved breath, closed his eyes, and for just a brief moment enjoyed just how quiet it felt. No chattering of animals, no roaring of aether, no humming of the engine. Wait. He opened his eyes again. The humming of the engine had stopped, completely and utterly. The engine room was as silent as the grave. It was as he turned to look at the massive cylinder. It had seen better days. Holes had been opened all over its surface, as if massive fists had punched their way through the metal, and acrid smoke was pouring out from within its bowels. The lights from the navigation consoles had blinked out, and Muzazi could already feel the ship listing beneath his feet. Whatever landing the Donhouse would be making, it wasn't a clean one. The coadjutant girl, Noelle, lay slumped in the corner, hair slick with sweat hanging over her face. "I did it," she muttered, almost disbelieving. I did it! Muzazi nodded. "Very well done. Now that the risk to the planet has been neutralized, we can make our leave. We have transport waiting back in the docking bay." As this girl had helped them, it was only right for Muzazi to allow her to accompany them. Besides, the special officer wasn't so unbending to leave a young girl behind in a situation like this. Noelle nodded vaguely. Okay, but what about the guy with you? Dragon Hadrian? Muzazi furrowed his brow. What about? Awful, sickly realization grabbed him. No, surely not. He swung around, taking in the room. The fifth dead's corpse, the countless dents and gouges left in the walls and ceilings, the wrecked equipment. Dragon Hadrian was nowhere to be seen. Wait, ceilings? Plural.
Oh. Yeah, let me fix that.
Sky. There were multiple layers. Dragon Hadrian was nowhere to be seen. No, he muttered, hands shaking. No! When did he... I think, said Noelle, when you were fighting off that guy's last attack, he just, left, I think. Hadrian! Muzazi screamed, voice echoing throughout the chamber, unanswered. Come back here right now! Coward! There was nothing. No response, no return, and Muzazi knew he wouldn't get one. If nothing else, Dragon Hadrian was skilled at running away. Damn it, when Hadrian had intercepted that blow from Muzazi, the special officer had, for just the briefest moment, considered that there could have been more to him than he'd first assumed. More than a treacherous rat! Clearly he'd been wrong. The moment Hadrian had doubted their victory, he'd fled for the hills, abandoning Muzazi to his fate. The tiniest part of Muzazi told him that explanation didn't quite ring true, but he pushed it away. Betrayal such as this left him in no mood for analysis. His grip tightened on Luminescence's hilt. Should he pursue? To what end? His arm was injured, and Hadrian had proved in the past he had no scruples against using underhanded tactics. He understood now that if he chased after Hadrian with anger in his heart, he would face only ruin. The ship was going down. He had to escape and meet back up with Marie. He had to get this Noelle girl and Patel, who had helped him, to safety as well. There was no time to punish Hadrian as he so sorely deserved. Reluctantly, with gritted teeth, Muzazi sheathed Luminescence. You escaped today, Dragon Hadrian, he told himself, but only today. The slightest nod to Noel to follow him, he strode out of the engine room. As he passed the carcass of the fifth dead, he noticed that the body was already cracking and snapping as its skeletal structure changed. As the meat clinging to its bones reshaped itself and new skin grew to cover the thinning muscle, twin strands of orange and pink aether danced over the display. Muzazi let it be. The fifth dead had been his enemy, but he had yet no quarrel with the sixth. Oh, what? That's cool. Will they have new techniques, or will it be like the same kind of fighting?
I don't really want to explain it here, because this will be explained later on, much later on.
That's cool. That's cooler than I thought. I thought it was just like a title given to like the mercenary of like an order or some shit. This is really cool.
Yeah, so it's more like Doctor Who.
I like that. I like that a lot. Alright, well that was a decent chapter. Pretty good. I liked it. I really liked it because also it kind of explained the whole. I thought the direction you were going when you were like it didn't mean as much to him was like because he's so tough he could take an aether burn, but no, it was like oh that's so cool. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I'm excited to get
and the way Muzazi describes it, it kind of makes it sound like it's going to be a completely different personality. And I'm wondering if maybe the pink aether is the aether of whoever created it. Oh, that's cool. I like that. That's really cool. All right, guys, take your bets. What is the sixth dead going to be like? Will they come up again? Tell us in the comments below.
Yeah, so I hope you liked that.
Did like it.
Do you have any lore questions? Are we still doing that?
Oh, shit. It's hard to keep thinking of good ones. You're the writer. You'd think of something you haven't written about yet. Oh, here's one. What's the most popular board game in Aetheral Space World?
Oh, that's a good one. Tell us in the comments. You're not going to tell us. You're not going to tell us, but I'll pretend you did. I'll read some fake comments next week.
Did we actually get comments in the last two videos?
I
didn't check.
Let me check. I don't actually know. I just complain about it. I don't actually check.
This guy. Wine. My series isn't popular enough. Just make an Aetheral Space SCP, idiot.
We got a comment on 3.47 last week. Let's see what it says.
What does it say?
I'm almost finished with discovering SCP. Aetheral Space is next. Thanks, Small Microraptor. We hope to see you here later, I guess.
Based.
But yeah,
I like Small Microraptor. He's a good soul.
Yeah, all our fans are good souls, except for, well, you know, that person.
Oh? You're not speaking of the Kelp Man.
I would never. But anyway, that's it, yeah. So thank you for listening, everyone. We appreciate it always.
Yep.
Bye! Bye!